So we want to learn a little bit more about who you are. So, Josh, how did you become a writer in the first place?
Do you want the professional answer or do you want the true answer?
Yes.
Okay, they're the same answer. So,
Okay.
That's handy.
Yeah, basically, when I was in college in South Carolina, I had several jobs to pay for college and pay for an apartment and food and the important things. And I needed more money. So at the time, this was early 2000s. So this was the boom of the digital magazine market. Lots of e-zines and digital journals. And I found that a lot of them were paying good money on publication or on acceptance for stories. And I read some of the stories on offer from these early pioneers of digital webzines and realized that I could write just as well. Most of these places at this time were asking for H.P. Lovecraft pastiches and Robert E. Howard pastiches. And they were paying 4 or 5 cents a word by PayPal, which handily enough, my landlord took. So I would sit down in a week and write 2 or 3 really bad Lovecraft ripoffs. And most of those I do not have listed on my website and my bibliography because they were awful. One of them was titled The Outsider, but He's Inside. In my notes. I didn't actually send it off with that title, but that was what it was titled in my notes. It was bad. And I wrote for various other publications, more dubious publications than those publishing Lovecraftian pastiches, but all for money. And eventually I realized that I enjoyed it. It wasn't just a way to make an extra 30 or 40 bucks a week. It was like, oh, I can actually do this. And then I stopped for a little while because I was working, again, I was out of college. I was working a midnight shift at FedEx, loading trucks, and I ended up getting married to my wife. My wife is English. She said, I think I want to go home. I said, okay. There's literally nothing holding me in South Carolina, so let's go. And I went, and I found out when I got there that I couldn't just get a job. Legally, I couldn't. So my wife said, why don't you get back to writing? And I said, oh, yeah, I could do that. That doesn't count as a job. About a year after that, I got a job with Black Library, the tie-in line for Games Workshop. I started selling executioner novels to Gold Eagle. Before I knew it, I had 4 or 5 book contracts a year and short stories selling. And I just said, oh, okay, yeah, this.
Perfect.
Yeah. I guess this is better than loading boxes for 6 hours at night. All right. In between writing all the cool stuff, I was also writing like search engine optimization blog posts and stuff for websites and advertisements for wedding photographers. I ghost wrote 2 or 3 novels for people who probably don't want me to share their names online. But it wasn't very easy. I was working 12 hours a day to try and get stuff going. And now I'm here.
Yeah.
So
Writing L5R.
So now you're writing Legend of the Five Rings tie-in novel. What brought you to L5R?
I knew about L5R. I've known about L5R for a long time. I was big into role-playing in high school and college. I'd never played L5R in any of the editions, but I had a friend who religiously bought every book. He liked to read them. And he liked to share them to say, isn't this cool? We should do this. And we would be like, yes, let's do this. And then we'd never do it. And so I'd known about it because I saw the advertisements for it in Dragon magazine. I think I'd read 1 or 2 of the novellas that came out a couple years ago. And I always liked it. I always liked the quiet aspect of it. The fact that honor and character interaction plays, you're not just going into a dungeon and killing things. Or going into a city and pretending you're going to talk to people and actually you're just going to kill them and take their money. I really like that part of it. And when Agonies approached me to write some stuff for them, the first thing they offered me, they said, was Arkham Horror and this and that and the other. And I said, ooh, Arkham Horror. Yes, please. I love Arkham Horror. because I could write a terrible Lovecraft pastiche. I can do that. That's old hat for me. But one of the other things they offered me was L5R. And I said, I knew what it was, and I read the background material to refresh myself on what it was about. And I said, yeah, this is the kind of book I want to write. I'm not a big action guy, even though most of the stuff I've written has been action-oriented. I actually like quieter character interaction, dialogue-driven stuff. So I went to lunch with the editors for Aconite, and they said, what kind of L5R book would you write? And I could feel them steering me away from the Shadowland stuff, because David Annandale was already writing that. And I wasn't like, that's interesting, but what I want to do is write a detective novel. And one of the editors said, do you want a Kitsune? I think that's right. Kitsuki, that's it. I get messing up the words already. Messing up the terminology already. So they said, you're going to do that for the detective? And I said, no, I don't think so. Because what I want to do is write Lord Peter Wimsey kind of detective novel. And so I laid out how I would have aristocrats, so somebody from one of the highest clans, best clans. And I would, that way he could go anywhere. He could theoretically talk to anyone without it being an issue, a social issue.
Mm-hmm.
So basically allowing me to avoid all of the stuff I wanted to write about if I wanted to. Because on top of being interested in a lot of this stuff, I'm also slightly lazy about some things. So I want to avoid as much of that as possible. But I wanted to have that lazy, aristocratic sleuth, amateur sleuth coming in and having everyone together in a room, and like Poirot from Agatha Christie, everybody's in the drawing room, and this is what happened. I wanted to lean into all of that, all of the tropes for those stories, because I love those stories. He had to have a sidekick or a bodyguard, someone who's more competent in the practical aspects of life, perhaps. So that's where Du Jishin's bodyguard in the novel came from. You need that character to be able to handle the stuff that your aristocrat can't handle. And then it spun out from there.
What is your next work coming up? What should we read next? Do you have something in the hopper?
Let's see. That is a dangerous question to ask. I just had a novel come out for Ubisoft, which I co-wrote with Jim Swallow. It's called Day Zero, and it's for the Watch Dogs Legion video game. It's a prequel to the events of the game. And that just came out. So if everybody could go buy 300 copies of that, that'd be great. Jim and I would thank you. I have a volume of short stories coming out, a collection of short stories in my Royal Occultist universe, which I've written a couple of novels for and had a collection come out last year of some of the stories. But this is a second collection of short stories that'll be out hopefully before the end of the year, which will be called Hockmuller's Hound, which is urban fantasy, occult detective kind of series. Characters in the 1920s England dealing with werewolves and vampires and evil cults and fairies and trolls and all that kind of stuff.
Stuff to look forward to.
Yeah.
Cool.
And that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Before we let you go, do you have an online presence? Are there any websites you'd like to plug? Social media, anything like that?
I do have a Twitter, which is JM Reynolds. I announce anything I'm writing on Twitter. I do have a website, but it's a lot more. If I write a blog post on my website, it's mostly just about whatever monster movie I watched that weekend. So it depends on whether you're interested in hearing me talk about monster movies. But it's joshuamreynolds.co.uk. And it has a list of all my works on it, all my short stories, all my novels, if you're interested in that kind of thing.
I'm sure there's a lot of monster movie fans too, so I think that's great. We'll make sure that we put your links in our show notes.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
But I think that's just about it. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us this morning. We really appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate all having me.